he also shed a bit of a tear. Stephen A. Smith, your takeaway on this speech?
Incredibly touching, sincere, heartfelt, essentially, indicative of everything we know Kevin Durant to be. Obviously, when we judge him in terms of being critical, we're measuring him against his own greatness and that of the greatest players to have ever played the game, because his greatness as a player has already been established. But I've often sat up here on many, many occasions and have told the world that he's one of the best people that you could ever find, that you could ever meet in professional sports. There's a few guys I feel that way about. Dwayne Wade coming first and foremost to my mind, but Kevin Durant's a special dude. And, when you tell a story and you allude to the trials and tribulations that you have to overcome, we all love those stories, but on far too many occasions we tend to take it for granted because, unless you're in it, you can't really absorb how deep it is for him to come from where he's come to where he's at right now. And then to bring up Caron Butler, he's a name that doesn't get mentioned much. I've known Caron Butler for years. Skip, to tell you a little story has nothing to do with Kevin Durant per se, but it's indicative of why he leaned over and looked at a guy like Caron Butler. If you remember years ago, and it's not to throw him under the bus, but Gilbert Arenas and his troubles in Washington, D.C., it may have ended with the whole gun thing with Crittenton and those and with the Wizards organization. But prior to that, he had signed a $100 million contract for Ernie Grunfeld. Got a little arrogant, got a little beside himself, was disrespectful to people within the Wizards organization, including a few women that were in a business meeting. And it was Caron Butler who got in his face and was saying, there's a certain way you treat people. There's a certain way you conduct yourself. There's a certain way that you're supposed to know how to act. Caron Butler is one of those upstanding citizens in the NBA. And so when Kevin Durant pointed him out and highlighted the emotional uplift that Caron Butler gave him, it was clearly understandable, because if you know anything about Caron Butler, that's the kind of guy he is, especially when he notices somebody who is special. And Kevin Durant, we're going to be critical of his game from time to time because, again, he's measured against his own greatness. But in the end, as a person, what you saw was the same genuine person you always see. He wears his emotion on his sleeve. Even when he was critical of you or anybody else, it's just him coming to the defense of his man, Russell Westbrook, which is what he said. He'll always have his back and all of that stuff because, ultimately he's a great ambassador for the game of basketball because of the person he is as much as the player that he is. And we saw that yesterday in full effect.
Good perspective.
I agree with everything you just said. I found it to be an amazing speech, a stunning speech. I thought Kevin Durant opened his heart and his tear ducts and just let it flow. But what was more amazing to me was that Kevin Durant was able to step out of the moment that he and his team find themselves in, that must-win Game 2 moment, and let his emotions flow like that. It was a little strange to me because as I watched, it sounded almost like a Hall of Fame acceptance speech. It sounded like a culmination kind of a speech, a grand finale, I finally arrived kind of a speech, almost like it's an it's over kind of a speech. And it only shocked me because I judge Kevin Durant, as you do, by his own greatness and at the highest level. And clearly, I think you would agree that Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant would not have been capable in that moment, at this point in the playoffs, of stepping out of the scenario that they'd find themselves in and let themselves go quite like that. That's just me. I don't think they could have, but it is Kevin. And we have talked and talked about Kevin Durant, and my emotions have swung with his soul searching over the last 3 years because this man has tried to find himself again and again. Who am I really? Am I a basketball player or am I a man? And he said, even yesterday. He said this year, for the first time ever, basketball was no longer my priority. Becoming a man was my priority. Now we go back a couple of years ago, and you remember Kevin was upset that he didn't have enough edge. He lacked some toughness. So what did Nike do for him? There was the sneaker campaign of Kevin Durant is not nice. And then Kevin swung completely back this year and said, no, that's wrong. That's not right. In the end, nice guys don't have to finish last. And he started a whole new campaign with the website, strongandkind.com. Chris Broussard did a great piece about it. And yet, all along, Strong and Kind, Kevin had the third most technical fouls in the NBA this year. And he got one the other night out of frustration when he cursed to the referee. So I'm thinking, who is he really? And then Mark Stein had a great sit-down with Kevin, as you saw after his presentation yesterday. What did it go, 26 minutes long? 27 minutes? And Mark asked him about his comment a few years back about you were sick and tired of being second. Remember that? And he said yesterday, nope, I was wrong then. I didn't understand what I was saying. I'm paraphrasing his comment. But he said, I was always first. I was first in Caron Butler's mind and in all my teammates' minds. My mom thought I was first. God thought I was first. So this is a whole new approach to life from Kevin Durant. So now we got to get it back into the basketball context, and I send it back to you with, okay, I think that was the real guy who stood up there in front of the cameras yesterday. That was the real, honest, raw Kevin Durant. How will that speech impact his team? Will it unite and inspire his team? It could. And then how will it impact Kevin as he goes forward into tonight? This is a big deal. Just on the basketball level, I think you would agree, their season teeters tonight, right? At home. It's not an absolute must-win, but I think we both think you better win it or you're going to be in big, big trouble and won't be able to bounce back. It did surprise me. It seemed a little odd that he would choose that moment to let it all flow out of him that way.
Well, I think it's a couple of things. You brought up Michael Jordan and you brought up Kobe Bryant. I think I have to remind you that Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant had both parents in the home. Mm-hmm. There are certain trials and tribulations that Kevin Durant endured that they simply didn't have to.
Yep.
And when you go through that, one of the hazards is one thing, and a lot of people talk about two-parent homes. I'm thinking two parents, period. What I mean by that is that you don't have to have both parents in a home to have both parents in your life. Mm-hmm. When you talk about somebody who's a single parent, that means there was only one parent who was present. And when there's only one parent that is present, particularly when it's a mom and it's the boys that they're raising, they have sons instead of daughters, that's an incredible challenge, not just for the parent, but for the kid, because the kid constantly is wondering about what's wrong with me. And I've never talked to Kevin Durant about this, even though I know him. I don't know him personally on that level, and I would never even share it, even if he told me to, unless he gave me permission to do so. But I'm speaking in a roundabout way from experiences that I've had, from experiences that I've known other folks have had. You have to understand that when you grow up and you have that psychological warfare that you're battling, you're constantly questioning yourself. You may not remember this. I remember what I consider to be the most powerful episode of Will Smith in The Fresh Prince with Ben Vereen. Yep. Mm-hmm. And, you know, and he was the father, and he came back to visit him, but then didn't want to take him with him, and he was going off, and then he started crying at the end saying, why doesn't he want me, man? Mm-hmm. You know, when you're a kid, you grow up with those questions when you're a young man and you don't have that father in your life. And no matter what anybody tells you, and no matter what skills you know you possess, and no matter how gifted you may know you are, there is always a question mark in the crevices of your mind as to who you are and how great you truly are. You don't necessarily fully believe everything that everybody's telling you. So when you take that and then you put that in the basketball court and you're competing at the very, very highest level, the way you shield yourself from that is by defining what winning is and not letting somebody else define it for you. It's not that you don't want a championship. It's not that you don't want to go for it. It's not that you're not giving your full-fledged effort. You just refuse to believe that that is what totally defines you after all the hard work you put in. Because if you could be so easily defined, then you could be easily knocked down to the question mark that you had inside of yourself about yourself.
He did.
And so you saw it raw or whatever, but I've always seen that Kevin Durant. I've never once looked at Kevin Durant and thought that there was anything remotely phony or disingenuous about him. He's always been genuine. He's always been genuine, rather. He's always been somebody that's been real, even if it's real wrong from time to time. He's real, and that's how he feels. And so you go from here. I think that the players will rally around him. I think it was incredibly moving. I think they'll want to win for him tonight. I think they'll be more focused than ever. I think they'll come out there and they'll play lights out. And more importantly, what I was thinking about last night, you came to mind, Skip, because as he was applauding and really lavishing praise upon Russell Westbrook, it made you look at Russell Westbrook differently. Because you see that how much Russell Westbrook means to him and how much he means to Russell. And so Russell almost broke down. And when I saw that, I said to myself, you know, if you're Russell Westbrook at that moment in time, you literally have nothing to prove because this is your guy. You see what I'm saying? When you have a star who embraces you on that level and lets the world know how much you mean to him, how valuable you are to him on both a professional and a personal level, that could end up being the one thing that catapults you because you have nothing left to prove. If there's one mistake that Shaq and Kobe in the end had, where Shaq is at fault, is that Shaq may have waited a little bit too long to make sure Kobe recognized how valuable he was to Shaq. You know, because once you're trying to help, it wasn't intentional. You're trying to help, your little brother, which is what he was calling him at the time, and all of this other stuff. But you waited too long. And ultimately, Kobe was, he had to be his own dude and do things his own way, and they parted ways. But if Kobe had been embraced from the very beginning, where Durant embraced Westbrook, who knows? All
right, so I'm going to take it back again to more of a cold-blooded basketball level. Okay? What did yesterday tell you? What did that speech tell you about Kevin? Does he have enough of the Jordan Kobe assassin in him to be the leader of a championship team?
I would say to you, that's not fair because I don't know anybody that's Jordan and Kobe, but what I will say is that could very well be the weight that's lifted off your shoulders.
You can argue.
The league MVP trophy, okay? Because remember, he's not into individual awards, but the league MVP trophy may very well be the weight lifted off your shoulders. Okay, that's over. That's done with. I don't have to worry about accolades and recognition on a personal level. Now it's all about the championship. You said it before, but now it's officially so.
But to me, he embraced the individual honor. He took that stage and used it, as I said again, as almost like a Hall of Fame feeling kind of a speech. I have arrived. A little surprising to me, and in the speech, remember, once again, you are empowering Russell. You're saying, you're my guy to do whatever you want, which has been my issue. You're telling Russell, you can do whatever you want. If you want to shoot more than I shoot, if you want to try to take over, I'm good with that. That's not the leader of the team. That's saying, Russell, you're my man. And in the end, I'm going to tell you again, I believe that Russell has to be the guy in the end, that cold-blooded assassin on this team to take it.
I wouldn't say have to be, but I would also caution you again, if you're wearing multiple weights on your shoulder and you're able to shed some of it off. It may have seemed like he embraced the individual award, but what I saw was an individual that was letting the world know, I have all of these people to thank. You see what I'm saying?
No, it's beautiful.
It's going to galvanize folks to come along for that ride with him.
So you think it will be a very positive going into game 2?
I think it would be a very positive going into game 2, but that doesn't mean they're going to beat the Clippers because the Clippers are lethal. Again, I picked the Clippers to lose this series because I'm thinking the games are going to be tight, and DeAndre Jordan, who I love and I think could be the best big man in the game if he hits his free throws. I have questions as to whether or not he can hit his free throws, but the Clippers are a juggernaut, and if they're going to run away with games,
Bayless,
So, whoa.
you mentioned soul searching for Kevin Durant. Hard to mature on a national stage as well as develop. We'll talk about the game 2, Clippers at Thunder tonight at 9:30 Eastern, a little later on in our show. Coming